It's 2025. We live in the world of AI, and you are complaining because your leads don't want to speak to you.
The leads are weak.
The leads are weak. Leads are weak. You're weak.
Well, what if I told you that's a lie? You probably just aren't communicating with them in the way they want you to communicate with them. In this video, I'm going to share with you a case study on how a client missed out on over $500,000 in sales, all because they weren't communicating with their clients in the right format. And I will show you the software I built to fix that problem. If you're new here, hi, my name is Bobby and I'm an iOS Swift UI software developer and creative strategist, and I built an ecosystem of 13 apps for creators and creator entrepreneurs that optimize their time, grow their revenue, and make your creative output easy. So make sure you watch to the end of the video and I'll actually show you the software that fixed the problem that's available for you to use also. So let me first start by highlighting the fact that competition for attention is incredibly fierce. You know, people today have so many options for information and products that attention and data are the two most valuable assets in today's society, it would seem. Now, those who have an audience can command a certain level of attention, and that can lead to high volumes of sales, transactions, or even deals. People's lives are already busy with family, work, travel, doom scrolling, children, pets, and entertainment, right? So you only have their attention for a limited time unless they are completely sold on your brand and content. So when it comes to sales, you need to be aware of these factors because it could send you down a rabbit hole that leads to no money and no sales. And that's if you get it completely wrong. So you might currently be running Facebook ads, then those leads are then zapped to your own custom CRM, and you can't understand why aren't you closing more leads or getting through to them at a higher rate. Now your tech stack, that could be a problem, right? It might be all over the place. You know, throughput to the desired outcome completely broken. So you have to realize in today's society that people don't want to, one, pick up the phone from numbers that they don't recognize. They just don't do that. People are busy, right? They're not going to make you and your call a priority if they aren't familiar with your brand. Three, they might have multiple options in the marketplace, even if you don't follow through. So it's your job as the business owner or operations manager, sales floor manager, to actually learn the best way to communicate with your desired clients for your success. For example, during the COVID years, everything switched from in-person to video. It was the first time in history where this has happened, where there was a seismic shift in how people communicated. Now, video is fully dominant in the marketplace, yet businesses, for the life of me, still refuse to switch to what makes sense today. Now, I know certain clients prefer to speak on WhatsApp. You know, if it's not WhatsApp, then it might be email as a stretch. You know, it could be SMS, it could be Telegram, it could be Instagram DMs. You know, there are many ways to speak with a customer today, but you have to find out which is the easiest one for them, not you. Now, in the beginning of this video, I mentioned a previous client problem who had a 30-day cycle negative cash flow challenge, which was pretty much affecting their business. They wouldn't be able to pay things on time. They were struggling to make payroll, etc. Now, their core business heavily relied upon new sales each month, and they had high expenses and little to pretty much no recurring revenue each month. So their sales and marketing process had some flaws in it, hence why they had the negative cash flow for many, many months. So my role as a creative strategist, as a contractor, you know, was to figure out a fix to this problem. So I pretty much discovered that the contact rates were really low. They had consistently no answers across their leads in the CRM, and they pretty much would call in the leads in the non-optimal time zone window. So they had no automation other than their CRM, which pretty much wasn't working the leads in the best way. And they had no pipeline views or dashboard to track the sales. They had huge bottlenecks within the human resources, i.e., high churn rate of staff, unskilled people in the wrong positions. Everything was a mess. Now, it took about 7 to 9 months just to undo all of the madness and start to figure some things out, which was affecting my area of work. And I had to start, build, and test with new systems in place. So once I began to see some feedback loops completed, I began to encounter more challenges and more problems. And the underlying issues began to present themselves, right? So the problem was their entire sales and marketing standard operating procedures were pretty much cooked. Right? They were done. They weren't working, they were broken, and a full revamp of their whole entire process is the most likely solution. Now, it's like if you take your car to the mechanic's garage to fix a problem, then they start to look and poke around and assess what's going on, and it turns out, right, the problem is worse than you expected. So they have to replace their entire engine. It was like that. And I'll be honest, some businesses might not have the capacity or the resources to replace the entire engine of their business. Some might be delusional and say, you are wrong. My business isn't in that worse of shape. There could be multiple outcomes. However, in this case, I found that it wasn't a case of the leads didn't want to speak to them. They just were on the wrong page with their leads, and their rigid system wouldn't allow them to connect with their leads efficiently. So I got to work and came up with a technology solution that factored in all of those things that I mentioned before. Things like the low contact rates, the lead management, time zone challenges, etc. Then Brilliant Sales was born. The first version was Brilliant Closer, which I'd done videos on, and Brilliant Sales replaced that with even more upgrades. Now, this system is designed to handle all lead management, pipeline views, dashboard, and give you an accurate pipeline month to month, right? You can even see how much you spend on ads. Now, the system has automations built in so that anytime you enter information or data on the leads, it all updates automatically, giving you the most accurate data that you need to see on a daily basis. On top of that, it keeps all the team members motivated to sell and close more deals. Now, there are additional tools to accompany Brilliant Sales, which I'll probably end up building into this software over time. Now I've figured out my system and flow. But for now, I've achieved a level with it that focuses on the core functionality, which is pretty much needed to increase sales from your leads. Now, the ability to know which marketing campaigns bring in the most money is vital, which you can see on the pipeline dashboard. The ability to track which sales members have, which clients and the values of those clients is also paramount, which you can see here. And knowing what stage those leads are currently at in the pipeline process is absolutely key to a team to manage. And having a CRM that allows clear communication through structured notes allows better lead management. Therefore, it's going to increase the quality of the leads and the notes for other people to assess, because sometimes you might be passing on leads to other agents or sales reps. A way to assign and unassign leads once you've pre-cleaned your data can lead to a slick all-in-one system that pretty much just takes the pain out of lead management. The data comes alive once you've used it properly, and then so much more can be done with it, right? So with the addition of, say, SMS, you add a layer of personal touches to your client communication. And this just makes you seem, less corporate and more approachable. And I've seen CRMs with notes saying, not interested. Then I could send them an SMS and they respond back saying, hey, nothing's changed. I'm still interested, which is proof that the previous method of communication didn't work for the client. It wasn't that it wasn't interested, it's just that you haven't hit them in the area that they communicate with the best. Now, there are 10,000 reasons why a client doesn't pick up the phone. You just have to find one way they will speak to you, and having a system to track that accurately, the process of the journey will dramatically help you. And you can get started with optimizing your lead management process today. So if you want to go a bit deeper on how you can automate everything in your sales procedure, then watch this next video where I actually cover a little bit more in depth.